is over. There was once an unprecedented time in American history when common citizens of their day began to define the rights of man and documented how those rights were being violated by their current government. They wrote to each other. They debated with each other. Ultimately, it was these common citizens who recorded these rights for all eternity, and furthermore created a new and free nation founded on these rights with liberty and justice for all of its citizens. Times have changed, but these rights remain.
I don't take responsibility.
That all citizens have the right to life. That all citizens have the right to pursue happiness. That all citizens are created equal. That all citizens have the right to a public trial. That all citizens have the right to peacefully assemble. That all citizens have the right to petition their government. What happens when you try to exercise these rights today? Is this government honoring your rights? Or are they violating them? Is this the government that those citizens aspired to? There is a solution.
I don't take responsibility. I don't take responsibility. I don't take responsibility.
Join me every Sunday afternoon for a new show where common citizens, you and I together, discuss with each other issues of today, where we demand proof and evidence is required, where we seek the truth and will not be silent. Join me this coming Sunday afternoon and take part in America's oldest and most honored tradition. Hello and welcome to The Left Speaks. My name is Chris. I will be your host for today, July the 18th, 2021. We are 6 months, 12 days removed from the insurrection attempt at the Capitol, as incited by former President Donald Trump, for which there have still been zero consequences. Today, we're going to be going over the anti-vax movement, specifically the 12 people, the 12 individuals, you heard that correct, there are 12 of them, that are responsible for 73% of the online anti-vax content that is spread and shared around. They're the ones creating it. They're the ones that are starting it. They're the ones that are sending it everywhere. Up to 65% of the anti-vaccine content on Facebook is directly traceable back to these individuals. So we're going to go over who they are, what their motivations might be. I think it's pretty obvious, and I'll give you a hint: money. We're going to go over their credentials, or rather lack thereof. We're going to go over some of the most basic, obvious flaws in their reasoning. And we're going to look at what they're actually selling, because it's not medicine. It's not science. And then we're going to look at where this ultimately traces back to, where the modern anti-vaccine movement, quote unquote, originated, how that science, or lack thereof, has already been debunked and destroyed, what the motivation for that was. I'll give you the same hint again: money, and why it ultimately matters. Why what one individual or two individuals or several 100,000 or several million individuals end up taking the vaccine or not will affect you. It's not just a personal decision with zero consequences to the rest of society. This isn't a simple choice like whether you decide to wear a seatbelt or not and whether you die from a car accident or not. You are directly affecting not only the rest of your family, not only the rest of your community, not only all of America, every American citizen, but you will be directly affecting the rest of the world. So for everybody who tunes in today, I thank you for taking the time. I'm going to move through these 12 individuals as quickly as possible, but there are 12 of them. We're going to look at some video evidence from what they specifically have said. We're going to look at some brief overviews of biographies and some previous claims they have made. The smart ones make rather vague and generic claims. The dumb ones make very specific claims, like we'll have millions of dead people from the COVID vaccine within 45 days of it being administered. I don't see millions of dead people from vaccines in America yet. It's been longer than 45 days. And for those of y'all who drop in afterwards and watch the YouTube video, I greatly appreciate you. You are always welcome to drop into any show, comment live, or call in. The number is always toll free, 855-915-5338. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. So this is a study that we're going to be referencing a lot of. The Disinformation Dozen. These are the names. The Center for Countering Digital Hate, CCDH, is who ran the study. They found that these 12 individuals, Joseph Mercola, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Bollingers, Ty and Charlene, they count them as one because they run pretty much everything together, Sherry Tenpenny, Riza Islam, Rashid Buttar, Erin Elizabeth, who is the girlfriend of Joseph Mercola, Sayer G., Kelly Brogren, who is the partner of Sayer G., Christine Northrup, Ben Tapper, and Kevin Jenkins. Now, to establish why this is important as it is.
Another group you might have heard have high hesitancy rates are Republicans, and that is also true. Around 30% of Republicans say they won't get it, and it's not hard to see why. Because fears and doubts about the vaccine have flown around conservative media, with one of the most prominent super spreaders being this fucking guy.
What about this vaccine? Why are Americans being discouraged from asking simple, straightforward questions about it? Questions like, how effective are these drugs? Are they safe? Do you need a reason to turn on the vaccine? And what happens if you do turn it down? Will you be allowed to fly on airplanes? Or go to work? Or enter the front doors of Madison Square Garden? Oh, now they're telling us the vaccine has a delayed response. Okay, delayed by how long? They don't say. If vaccines work, why are vaccinated people still banned from living normal lives? Honestly, what's the answer to that? So maybe it doesn't work and they're simply not telling you that. Well, you hate to think that, especially if you've gotten 2 shots. But what's the other potential explanation?
Okay, it is genuinely weird to see someone hosting a show on a supposed news network and ending every sentence with a question mark, especially when answers to most of those questions are out there for anyone who cares to know. So for instance, that last complaint that the CDC still recommends wearing masks indoors when around vulnerable, unvaccinated people does not mean the vaccine doesn't work. Clinical trials found that the vaccines are spectacularly successful at preventing people from getting serious disease. As for whether they protect you from spreading the virus, the trials weren't designed to assess that, but evidence so far indicates that they drastically reduce transmission. The reason we still see mask and distancing recommendations is that the CDC is being cautious, and wants to be sure that it is not spreading bullshit around during a global pandemic like a frozen dinner duke with a TV show. Anyway.
So to put that in plain English for a lot of people that wouldn't catch it on the anti-vax side, the test that the CDC did and that the people did on the vaccines wasn't designed to test whether it spread from one person to the next. In other words, whether you could still be a carrier and give the virus to somebody else. It was designed to see whether the vaccine would protect you, not protect others from you. The equivalent would be if you were going to buy a car and you ask if it could go from 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, the correct answer from the salesman in most cases should be, I don't know. Not slap the hood of the car damn straight, this baby can do it. If you ask if that car can tow something, and they've tested to see if it can tow that weight, then he can say, yeah, it can tow up to this weight. But the CDC is not going to sit out there and spread bullshit that they don't know. They test things first, then provide the answer. Masks are inconvenient. They're not going to ruin your life. So until the test is done, wear a damn mask. That's what the CDC was saying. Dash Mickey, welcome in. And yeah, it's only 12 individuals.
I hope that answers at least one of your gape-mouthed bad faith wonderings, Tucker, you scrunch-faced fear baboon. And the problem is, when people like Tucker raise questions without bothering to answer them, there is a lot of misinformation out there for people to then stumble on. Anti-vaccine groups have been waiting for a moment like this to spread doubt. And the scary thing is, they don't actually need to convince people they're right. They just need to convince people that no one is. And that tracks with recent polling. While few believe specific myths about the vaccine, larger numbers say that they didn't know whether particular myths were true or false. For instance, only 4% of people believe the COVID vaccine is more deadly than the disease, but 25% say they don't know. And that is not good. Because if anti-vaxxers can simply spread enough misinformation to cause people to throw up their hands and say, I just don't know enough to get the shot, they have already seriously fucked things up for all of us. And to be clear, most people who are hesitant are not fanatics or conspiracy theorists. Many are just trying to make the best decision for themselves and their family, like that pediatrician that we saw earlier.
So that's another key point there. Most people who are hesitant on taking the vaccine aren't diehard conspiracy theorists. Vaccines cause autism. It's going to kill us all. The government's out to, create 5G walking human networks and microchip people with Bill Gates's, microchips and all that kind of shit. They don't buy that. Okay. Most of the people that you will find in the anti-vax community are simply baffled by the amount of bullshit that is spread among the actual real information from scientific institutions. As we go through these individuals, you will see that many of them represent themselves as doctors when in fact they are not medical doctors. They may have a doctorate in something else, but they come out and present themselves as Dr. Whoever. And in the context, it's extremely misleading. I'll give you a foreshadow. I found 1 out of the 12 to actually have an MD. 1. And she hasn't been practicing for quite some time. But that's a key thing to notice. Just like somebody shouting fire in a crowded theater can cause a panic, even though nobody else sees evidence of fire, you're dealing with the same thing with vaccines. If you have enough people spreading enough bullshit about there being a fire around vaccines, you have a lot of individuals who will act as if there's a fire and it causes a problem for everybody else. They panic in relation to something that's not actually a problem, or they give up in trying to find the truth.
You definitely know people like that in your life. So I'm actually going to spend the rest of this piece trying to clear up some of the biggest myths flying around. And some are pretty easy to debunk quickly, like the claims that Bill Gates is using the vaccine to put a microchip in all of us, something his wife had this response to.
I know my husband is not vaccinating people and putting a microchip in her arm because that technology doesn't even exist and he's never uttered the words out of his mouth, so...
Okay, that wasn't the reassuring pushback to a batshit conspiracy theory that I had hoped for, to be honest. We're not microchipping people because the technology doesn't exist yet, and my husband hasn't said it out loud to me. Why would you put it like that? There are lots of things a husband won't say out loud to his wife, not dark things, just things, quiet thoughts.
And that's enough from Mr. John Oliver. I initially thought about going through all the different ways to debunk vaccine conspiracies. And there's quite a few of them. You've got the Bill Gates is going to inject microchips into people. Most of them are ridiculous on their face. Bill Gates injecting microchips into people is ridiculous on its face. First off, he wouldn't need to. The odds are you already carry a cell phone. This cell phone has a battery. It has a GPS tracker in it. It has your information tied to your cell phone number and everything else. Why would you need to spend all of this money, time, research, manufacture some fake pandemic, spend God knows how much money convincing every medical institution around the world, the WHO, the CDC, countries that compete with the United States and their medical institutions, like Russia, like China, to all buy into this conspiracy theory so you can get everybody to inject themselves with your secret tracking chip when the entire world pretty much already has a cell phone with a GPS in it. Like I said, that idea does not make sense within its own conspiracy. If you're interested in going through and debunking a lot of these anti-vax conspiracies, YouTube, Anti-Vax Debunked, will give you countless reputable sources from medical doctors, not chiropractors and philosophers, like a lot of these anti-vax dozen are, from the Mayo Clinic, from the CDC, from the WHO. There are tons of sources already doing that if you can't see how ridiculous the idea of Bill Gates injecting people with a microchip is. Now, the origins of that story are kind of amusing. Short version is Bill Gates does a lot of work in vaccination in Africa. There's a lot of refugee children in Africa. His foundation was wondering if it would be possible with the injection to basically, when you had a shot, keep a record in your blood of that shot, because obviously refugee children aren't exactly in a position to carry around medical records. Didn't end up working out, but somehow that became microchips that transmit data around the world type conspiracy level theories. So anybody who advocates for that stuff as we go through this dozen, to me, that is enough to dismiss them out of hand. They're already in batshit conspiracy theory land with zero evidence. And on this show, if you make the claim, then you need to provide the proof. And none of them have come close to providing proof that Bill Gates is actually trying to inject people with microchips. Hockey Puck 33, here's a good one. China did it to take over the world's economy, and look at how good they're doing. Are you trying to say China developed COVID to take over the world's economy? Because I've heard that one too, and it's pretty good. China was already, their economy was already growing by leaps and bounds. And if the rest of the world, you know, kind of quits having a decent economy, you can't sell them anything. They have to produce things to, you know, trade back and forth. But yeah, I agree. That's a good one. There's a lot of crazy conspiracies out there related to that stuff. So let's drive into Mr. Mercala. Born July 8th, 1954. Osteopathic doctor. Not a medical doctor. Not an MD. Hockey Puck, I know you're not saying it, brother. I saw you put it in quotes. And it's from a lot of the conspiracy theorists, Dash Mickey. He's written books called The No Grain Diet and The Great Bird Flu Hoax. Oh, okay. So he's already profited off of a potential pandemic before. Mercala and his colleagues advocate a number of unproven alternative health notions, including homeopathy and opposition to vaccination. Okay, so for those who don't know what homeopathy is, that's basically the theory, the idea that medicine is only good in really, 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 really tiny amounts. So you take some medicine and you dilute it and dilute it and dilute it and dilute it and dilute it. And then you take that pill and you'll be okay. It'll cure you or heal you. It's already been discredited countless times. There was a guy who went around debunking homeopathy for years, James Randi. And he'd walk out on stage, and you can find his TED Talk on YouTube, and take an entire bottle of homeopathic sleeping pills. Because by the time you dilute this stuff as many times as they're recommending, there is essentially less than one dose in a swimming pool full of neutral liquid. In other words, there's not enough there to do shit. So we're already into quack land and not real medicine land. And yes, Hockey Puck, Fox News is spreading a lot of bullshit related to this. A lot of it comes back to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has dived fully into the pool of I'm just asking questions, which is ridiculous for a news show. Asking questions and providing no answers and acting like those questions can't be asked because they're dangerous to ask. Tucker Carlson, you should remember that you have a professional responsibility to educate your audience, not just scare the shit out of them. At one point, his website, Mercola.com, where he sells his supplements, had an F rating with the Better Business Bureau because it doesn't honor its 100% money-back guarantee. That's surprising. His website, however, draws about 1.9 million unique visitors per month, each of whom returns to that website an average of 10 times a month. Now, this is one of the keys. This is one of the things they're selling you, because it's not medicine, like I mentioned earlier. It's distrust. The fundamental sales hook that you can't trust the government, and because I don't trust the government, you can trust me. So in other words, you don't trust the government, I don't trust the government, so that means everything that I tell you is above board. You can trust everything I say from that. Basic Sales 101. Find common ground and go from there. Again, it's not medicine. And you'll see this throughout it. You can't trust the government. You can't trust big pharma. You can't trust Western medicine. Believe me. Don't worry about the fact that I provide zero evidence beyond some stories that my method actually works. Ignore the fact that, unlike every other scientist out there, I don't publish peer-reviewed papers that the rest of the world gets to look at and see my study and test and recreate my study to see whether I was actually doing the correct work or whether I was bullshitting everybody. You can't trust mainstream science. So if you find somebody who's conspiratorially minded, who's got that distrust of the government, who's got that distrust of big pharma, or distrust big institutions in general, it's very easy to start leading them down this slope. Why they end up distrusting one big institution or big field like science and instead trusting this one guy is something I don't fully understand yet.
Sadly, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought untold levels of hardship and suffering, with millions of people losing their jobs. Kids unable to socialize and go to school or even play outside. Drug overdoses are skyrocketing. Depression and anxiety are at all-time highs. Even worse, the technocratic overlords continue to control the pandemic narrative and take advantage of the chaos that they have created.
The technocratic overlords continue to control the pandemic, but somehow this video is still up on YouTube. I guess they're not very good technocratic overlords, because Mr. Mercola here can come and tell you the truth about how the global pandemic that has killed closing in on 1 million people in this country is overblown. But again, notice the tone. Let me get you scared and let me get you distrusting other big institutions.
Right before your very eyes, they have radically increased their wealth and power to even greater heights, while eroding your personal freedoms and civil liberties. Scaremongering, misinformation, draconian lockdowns, media censorship, and attacks on whistleblowers.
It's not scare tactics if people are actually fucking dying. And if you want to allege some kind of global conspiracy, then you need to prove that. because it's pretty hard for me to believe that one not medical doctor somehow managed to find proof that every hospital, every university, all these competing pharmaceutical companies, all these competing countries, all these competing social media companies, Facebook and Google aren't exactly friends, all conspired together to come up with fake death numbers. Which is easier to believe? That they all got in on a gigantic conspiracy to lie about COVID. How many people are we talking? Dozens, hundreds, maybe a few thousand? Or that you're lying? What's that old saying? Two people can keep a secret if one of them's dead? And you're expecting me to think that thousands of people plotted and planned this out, are controlling all the information we can get out there about COVID except your video. Apparently you slipped through the cracks. I'm supposed to believe that instead of the guy that made a lot of money off of a book about the last pandemic is trying to make a lot of money off of a book about this pandemic. A guy that's not a medical doctor.
This is just the beginning. They're now proposing even stricter measures to eliminate your privacy and personal liberties. They're now releasing digital health passports and tracking technologies to impose even greater control over your life.
Technology that already exists. Your phone has a GPS on it. If big government is really interested in where you are, they already can do it. This digital health passport thing he's trying to scare you with, you already have a GPS on your phone. And your phone number is a unique number that's tied to you. But ignore that part. We can't talk about that. That would take away the fear motivation here. Don't think, just get scared. And listen and buy what I'm selling you so you don't have to be scared anymore.
My new book, The Truth About COVID-19, investigates the origins of SARS-CoV-2, important topics that have been kept hidden from you and manipulated with disinformation. My book will help you break through the chaos and help you and your family take back control of your life. Order a copy of my new book now and get exclusive bonuses giving you vital information you need to know now. With everything that's happening around the world, it's more than just about taking control of your health. It's about joining the fight for a future with true democracy and true health.
So that's Joe Mercola. And that's what he's selling. He's selling you feeling safe from the fear that he's going to create for you. All these big institutions are out to get you. But if you buy my book, you can get back to being in control of your life and you can feel safe. He's creating the problem, the fear, and trying to sell you the solution. Now, as to his actual medical recommendations, only thing I'm going to say about that, this is his warning letter from the FDA. His most recent one. I believe he's had 3 from February 18th of 2021, this year. Unapproved and misbranded products related to coronavirus 2019. Some examples of the claims on your website that establish the intended use of your products. Vitamin C and D are finally being adopted in the conventional treatment of the novel coronavirus. Vitamin C at extremely high doses acts as an antiviral drug, actually killing the virus. Another powerful component in the prevention and treatment of influenza is vitamin D. Although vitamin D does not appear to have a direct effect on the virus itself, it does strengthen the immune system. FDA is advising consumers not to purchase or use certain products that have not been approved, cleared, or authorized by the FDA, or that are misleadingly represented as safe or effective treatment for the prevention of COVID-19. Your firm will be added to the published list on FDA's websites of firms and websites that have received warning letters from the FDA. Within 48 hours, he had to respond to the FDA, and failure to adequately correct any violations may result in legal action, including without limitation, seizure, and injunctions. The FDA may come after all this shit. I'm not a medical doctor. I don't pretend to be. He doesn't have an MD either. And we're going to see there's several of these DOs is what they're called. They are licensed to practice medicine in the United States, but not necessarily in all countries. And they're not MDs. You'll see a couple more of them on this list. But I'm going to take the FDA's word on this, along with the countless other medical doctors, actual MDs who have come out saying that this guy's a quack. I got nothing against vitamins, but anybody that wants to tell you to take vitamin C and D to cure a disease, but you have to buy it from them in their special super secret formula on their website, there's your financial motivation right there. Number 2, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Let's see what his motivation might be. So he did a lot of work as an environmental lawyer related to the Kennedy political family, was around Camelot when JFK was in office, assistant district attorney in Manhattan, Well, I don't see anything in there about being a medical doctor.
Hey, it's 2021. Living with heroin.
Is spending years campaigning for safer vaccines in the United States. Recently, that campaign provoked some savage ridicule from HBO host John Oliver. Watch.
These days, very few people will say they are completely anti-vaccine. Instead, like the president, they'll say, I'm not anti-vaccine, but. One example is, hey, I'm not anti-vaccine, but I am pro-safe vaccine. And that can often refer to concern over scary-sounding ingredients like thimerosal, a mercury-based preservative. For years now, RFK Jr. has led a crusade against it. In fact, just this year, he gave a speech where he said this.
For 33 years, I've been working to get mercury out of fish. Nobody has ever called me anti-fish. And because I want mercury out of vaccines, I should not be called anti-vaccine.
Okay, well, for a start, why would anyone be ashamed to be called anti-fish? Fish are stupid. And how do I know that? Look at them. Just look at this idiot.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. joins us tonight. The response to that piece that John Oliver did really struck me. I think of you as someone whose bona fides as a Democrat and a liberal are kind of unimpeachable, and yet they piled on you. Why? Why is raising questions about the safety of vaccines a no-go zone on the left?
Well, you know, it's interesting because it's not consistent with the traditional liberal posture of skepticism towards large corporate power, and particularly the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes.
That's not skepticism. Skepticism is not denying evidence when it exists and closing your eyes and pretending like the science hasn't been done on vaccines. There have been thousands of tests on vaccines. We've basically eradicated smallpox and polio. We'd have basically eradicated measles until it started making a comeback with the anti-vax movement. We did a test with millions of children, I believe it was in Britain and the United States, about the claim that vaccines cause autism. Newsflash, it doesn't. Skepticism isn't just asking questions and pretending there's no evidence. Skepticism is, I'm not going to believe something until there is sufficient evidence to warrant belief. The work's been done. The evidence is there.
And government agencies. And CDC has been characterized by at least 4 federal studies as a cesspool of corruption because of its pervasive interactions, entanglements, I would say, with the vaccine industry. The CDC vaccine branch is really a subsidiary of the vaccine industry. It sells $4.1 billion worth of vaccines a year. It spends about $4.6 billion, almost half of its budget, promoting vaccines, and it only spends $20 million testing vaccines. That's good for a tiny handful of the vaccines we have.
They don't need to retest polio vaccine this year. We did that already. We don't need to retest whether the MMR vaccine causes autism. We did that already. No, it doesn't. But you know what we do need to do this year? There's a lot of kids being born. They might need that MMR vaccine. So I don't need to retest that vaccine every year if it's using the same damn formula that I already tested last year or the year before that or the year before that. But I do need to get those shots into people's arms. And there are new kids being born every year. So yeah, it would make sense to have a higher budget for administering those vaccines than it would for testing. This is common sense. And you can apply this to damn near any business. Ford builds a lot of trucks. I bet they spend more money every year building trucks than they do doing crash tests on those trucks. Who'd have thought? But again, notice what we're selling. You can't trust the big institutions. So believe me, there's so much profit, money motivation here. But believe me, don't look at how I'm making my money. But look at those guys over there and don't trust them. Selling distrust of big institutions without any evidence. I'm going to create the problem and I will offer you the solution. Let's jump into the Bollingers here. Ty Bollinger. No medical training. History of disseminating misinformation about cancer treatments, anti-vaccine conspiracies, misinformation about COVID-19, promoting ineffective or unproven cures, conspiracy theories on social media platforms. He's a former bodybuilder. I guess bodybuilders take a lot of classes in cancer treatments now. Chemotherapy doesn't cure the disease. Functions as a merchandising platform for their numerous instructional videos as well as food supplements, alternative health books, and treatments. Let's take a look at what Mr. Bollinger has to say.
With CRISPR editing and adding
protein digesting enzymes. Cancer cells have a protein coating. They're kind of invisible to the immune system. And so by using enzymes, they would digest the coating around the cancer cell, make it visible to the immune system, and the immune system could go to work. And that's a simplified version of the treatment, of course. Everyone had an individualized diet that he put them on. He used detoxification. He used coffee enemas to help to detoxify the liver. Exercise. It was a complete protocol, but that was the basis of it. And it worked really, really well. And that's one of the ones that has stood out to me. Interestingly, I just went to Asia. I've mentioned this several times, but it's because it's fresh in my mind. And in the Philippines.
We got to back that up a little bit. I apologize. YouTube saved where I was at.
Sloan Kettering, he was just, he had impeccable credentials, and he just was a researcher. And he learned about this dentist in Dallas, Texas, that was using a therapy that was healing cancer patients, named Dr. Donald Kelly. He'd actually healed his own pancreatic cancer with this treatment. So Dr. Gonzalez went down to Dallas to show that Dr. Kelly was a quack. He's in the interview that I did with him a few years ago, he said they went.
So we've got Dr. Gonzalez going down to Texas to interview Dr. Kelly. Notice we're going to throw doctor in both of those. One's a researcher. The other's a fucking dentist. And the dentist cured his own cancer, supposedly. We're off to a great start.
Went down, he and a group of physicians went down to show that Dr. Kelly was a quack. And they started examining his patient records. And Dr. Gonzalez personally examined over 10,000 of his patient records. And he realized after examining 10,000 records that he was actually healing over 90% of his patients when it comes to 5-year survival, 90%. And at that point, he realized that he hadn't been taught how to treat cancer properly in medical school, and that Columbia University didn't know, and that Sloan Kettering didn't know. And he adopted the Kelly protocol, turned it into the Gonzalez protocol, which is based upon using a lot of proteolytic, which is protein digesting enzymes. Cancer cells have a protein coating. They're kind of invisible to the immune system.
So the devil went down to Texas looking for a cure for cancer, found a dentist with a 90% survival rate. Hallelujah. Oh, wait, that's the wrong word for the devil. But anyway, let's see what we did with that. Nick Gonzalez. Hey, at least he's an MD. Patients may take as many as 150 pills per day of the above supplements. Oh, okay. We're definitely making some sales that way. Conclusions. Neither Kelly nor Gonzalez has identified the proposed toxins in processed food that are supposedly causing this cancer. Neither has evidence that abnormal protein molecules from necrosing tumors are toxins or that they poison organs. They can say that it happens, but they can't fucking identify where it's coming from. Neither has evidence that cancers thrive in an anaerobic environment. They just say it does. They can't provide the evidence for it. Neither has shown that coffee enemas, megavitamin doses, and their special diets inhibit the progress of cancer. Neither has produced evidence that a deficiency of pancreatic digestive enzymes is related to the onset of cancer. No evidence. No evidence. No evidence. No evidence. Neither have produced evidence that enzymes from animal or vegetable sources can replace enzymes in human organs. No evidence. There is no evidence that ingested pancreatic enzymes seek out and kill cancer cells. No evidence. Neither has produced evidence that their regimens are more effective than a placebo for cancer. No evidence. Health is weird. Sometimes you get sick, sometimes you get better. Sometimes cancer spontaneously goes into remission. We don't know why. Or we can't identify the reason. If you happen to be eating eggs that day, and then you got the diagnosis from your real doctor that your cancer went into remission, that doesn't mean that eggs cured your cancer. That means we don't know why your cancer went away. Your body won. Good job. That doesn't mean the eggs did it. That doesn't mean the coffee enemas did it. That doesn't mean the 150 supplements you took did it. That doesn't mean that you cured toxins. This is why testing is important. And apparently, when they've tested this, and they've given some cancer patients 150 supplements a day, and they've given other cancer patients a placebo pill, a sugar pill that we know does nothing, just as many people get well in each group. Anytime any medical expert, wellness advising person, spiritual healing guru doesn't want to show you studies, doesn't want to show you data that's been looked at by other people, not just their own stuff, you need to start having big red flags go off. Because anybody can tell you stories. I can go right now and pick out 10 stocks in the stock market. And 2 of them will have a winning day. Well, if I mail out my stock pick and I send 1 out of those 10 to 10,000 people, hey, I'm going to have 20,000 that think I was right. 100% correct. It's a con game. Because you won't know that I missed on the other 8. That's what these guys are doing. Don't look at the ones that died. Don't look at the ones that got cured from their chemo. I'm not going to tell you that they had chemo or that they had another doctor. I'm not going to tell you that the cancer they had has a life expectancy of longer than 5 years. I'm not going to tell you that everybody that tests my method, besides me, can't prove that it works beyond the rate of chance. Let me just show you some feel-good stories about the handful of people that survived while they happened to be eating eggs. I mean, using my method. So that's the Bollingers. Now we get to the fun one. Sherry Tenpenny. Sherry Tenpenny is an American anti-vax activist who supports the disproven hypothesis that vaccines cause autism. Okay, so for those who don't know, there was a study in Britain that said that vaccines caused autism. It has been thoroughly debunked. Out of an abundance of concern, they did a study after one quack released his falsified study, which we'll demonstrate in a minute. This study, meta-study, covered 1,256,407 children, showing no link between vaccines, the MMR vaccine specifically, which was the one alleged to supposedly have caused autism. There's no link. The study it is refuting covered, I believe it was 12 children. So anybody who raises the vaccines cause autism link either doesn't know what they're talking about or is lying to you. There was another YouTuber who did a great bit on vaccines and the case around this study.
Was a joke. Part 5, it gets much worse. Brian Deere didn't stop there. Wakefield was trying to...
One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right, but not enough about the subject to know you're wrong.
to sue him to get him to stop digging. And guess what? One of the first rules of investigative reporting is that if they try and sue you for finding things out, you're probably onto something.
I mean, he brought me into the story by virtue of the fact that years ago he sued me.
He discovered that 2 years before the paper was published, Wakefield had been hired by a lawyer to conduct the study. The lawyer, Richard Barr, had realized...
So Andrew Wakefield was the gentleman who published the initial study saying that vaccines caused autism, specifically the MMR vaccine in Britain. Now it turns out he was hired 2 years before that by this attorney to create the study.
Realized there was potentially millions and millions of pounds in bringing a class action lawsuit against MMR manufacturers on behalf of parents of autistic children. But since there was no actual evidence the vaccine did this, he paid Wakefield to find some. Wakefield charged Barr £150 an hour for the time he spent working on the study, eventually totaling over £435,000. In today's money, that's more than $1.1 million. This was more than 8 times his yearly salary at his job at the hospital. 6 months before The Lancet published the study, Barr sent Wakefield a letter saying, and I quote, actually I got Sean to say it,
I have mentioned to you before that the prime objective is to produce unassailable evidence in court so as to convince a court that these vaccines are dangerous.
Oh, okay.
The doctor who created the initial study, and I say created very intentionally, was paid $1.1 million to produce unassailable evidence in court that vaccines are dangerous. You want to know who not to trust? $1.1 million. Here's your smoking gun. Anti-vax crowd that doesn't like to trust big institutions. You got one attorney, noted for their trustworthiness, paying another radically debunked former doctor, had his medical license stripped away in Britain, $1 million. But wait, there's more.
This whole thing was bullshit, wasn't it? And hey, remember Jabs? Jabs was involved with the lawsuit, and it turned out their members helped to recruit many of the parents to the study in the first place. I swear to God, this isn't one of the joke logos we made. This is actually the header on their Facebook page. This low-resolution, shitty nightmare. Jackie Fletcher, the founder of Jabs, was also a litigant in the lawsuit. They needed her connections to the dozen or so other parents who actually blamed MMR to be able to do all of this. Some of the parents were even involved with the lawsuit too. It's kind of clever if you think about it. A couple of parents blamed vaccines for their child's autism and wanted to sue its manufacturer, but there was no evidence it wasn't just a coincidence, so they told their opinions to a doctor their lawyer had hired, who would then report those opinions in a paper. And now in court you can say there's scientific evidence implying a link between vaccines and autism, even though the link is just those opinions from before. There's probably a word for this trick. Idea laundering? I don't know. Not all of the parents knew the study was being done to help a lawsuit, but they were all chosen deliberately. However, like we explored earlier, not many parents in 1996 blamed vaccines for autism, so they had to cast a wide net to even find the couple of parents they did. Child 11 wasn't even from England. He was from California. If a contact of Jabs or Richard Barr thought you might suspect vaccines made your child autistic, you and your child were being flown around the world to take part in this study. And even then, some of the parents still turned out not to blame the vaccine. I cannot stress enough what a fucking shambles this paper was. Most of the other doctors working on the study had no idea the guy running it had been paid hundreds of thousands of pounds to discredit MMR.
So this is where the modern anti-vax movement stems from. And the link to H. Bomber Guy's video will be fully in the description down below. I recommend watching it. He's a lot funnier than I am, and the research he put into that video was amazing. But you've got a group of concerned parents who noticed that their child had autistic symptoms about the same time as they got the MMR vaccine. They go hire an attorney to try and sue the manufacturer of said vaccine. There's no scientific evidence of that MMR caused their kid's autism. Autism and the MMR shot generally show up about the same time in a person's life. So the attorney goes and hires this doctor, pays him a few $1 million a year, or excuse me, $1 million over 2 years, to take the kids of the parents who thought that vaccines caused autism and use them for his study to say that vaccines caused autism. so that the attorney could take that study and go in court and say, hey, here's the proof. It's just opinion. And like I said, out of concern, even though the paper was absolute crap, scientists still went, did tons of studies on this, 1.2 million children, not randomly picked or not specifically picked out like these 12 poor children were. So anybody who's telling you that vaccines cause autism clearly does not know what in the hell they're talking about. So let's get back to Sherry. So we start off with the disproven hypothesis that vaccines cause autism. Graduated with a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Toledo. Oh, look, another DO. Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine, not an MD. Let's look at some of her more fun theories. This one's a good one.
It's time to help people customize and save with Liberty Mutual.
Cleveland doctor and anti-vaccine advocate went on a rant about 5G internet and metal objects sticking to the bodies of vaccinated people while giving testimony at an Ohio State House Health Committee meeting today. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny did this while testifying in favor of House Bill 248, which would keep a business or the government from requiring vaccinations.
But I'm sure you've seen the pictures all over the internet of people who've had these shots and now they're magnetized. They can put a key on their forehead, it sticks. They can put spoons and forks all over them and they can stick. Because now we think that there's a metal piece to that. There's been people who've long suspected that there was some sort of an interface, yet to be defined, an interface between what's being injected in these shots and all of the 5G towers.
To be very clear, medical professionals and the makers of the vaccines have
I think the magnetism bit is real. I'm stuck. Why are people, for lack of a better word, delusional about this? There is more proof that the vaccine works. Barbara, I think Facebook vaccine watchdog took you down. Hey, I'm fine with that. It needs to be. I'll get it cleared afterwards. I'm happy they're taking some of her stuff down, finally, at least. This is beyond nuts in a lot of cases. And President Biden specifically calling out Facebook in regards to this, saying that Facebook is killing people by allowing this shit to spread. He is absolutely correct. You had to switch to YouTube. I appreciate you following me from YouTube. Thank you so much. But I'll get it cleared on Facebook, hopefully after the show's over. Good to see you back, by the way. Some of this stuff has been cleared off of YouTube, but they're still letting these people publish stuff. But you heard her correctly. The vaccine makes you magnetic, according to Sherry Tenpenny. Because you can stick a key to your forehead. Sherry, that's called sweat. I mean, that's what it is. Again, if you want to see these kinds of things, this has been around for ages. You can go pull up on YouTube James Randi again, he's deceased now, debunking this stuff constantly. You can put a neutral powder, that wouldn't block magnetism, but would keep you from sweating on your forehead, and the damn key won't stick anymore. what did I say this one was? Give me just a second. I got to find the time link on this one. This is my favorite one of hers, though, to show you how batshit insane we are.
Vascular disease. The one doctor that reported dying, got ITP, which is a blood disorder, which is an autoimmune disease that probably the spike protein antibody starts attacking the red blood cells, breaking it down, and you die from that. And so some people are going to die from the vaccine directly, but a large number of people are going to start to get horribly sick and get all kinds of autoimmune diseases 42 days to maybe a year out. And what are they going to do? These stupid doctors.
42 days to maybe a year out. That was in February, everybody. We haven't reached her year mark yet, but we're certainly past 42 days, and I haven't seen some huge spike in autoimmune disease contraction rate from the CDC. I certainly haven't seen millions of people dying. Now, she's an affiliate marketer, in case you're wondering where her grift comes in, for Mercala. So, basically, if you buy something from Mercala's website and they can trace it back to her, she gets some money. So what do they say about all the others who have had vaccines and are completely fine? I and my son have both received our vaccinations as a kid and older, and nothing happens except maybe getting a little sick. Mostly what they do is they try to raise doubts. Some people are going to get the vaccine and they're going to be fine, but some people are going to get the vaccine and they're going to get autism. So do you want to take that chance? And again, for Facebook and YouTube, I'm saying their argument, and I think it's bullshit. So they'll raise the specter, just like she just did in this video, of something that would really scare people. Some people are going to take the COVID vaccine and they're going to get this terrible autoimmune disease. Millions of them are, according to her, with no evidence whatsoever, right? Some people will get it and be fine, but you don't want to be one of the ones that gets the really, really, really bad side effects that we can't prove exist. Take my supplements instead. Subscribe to my website instead. That's the underlying hook. So we can explain away the people that stay healthy. Oh yeah, most people are going to be fine. There's going to be some terrible side effects for some people though, and you don't want to risk those terrible side effects. But you still don't want to get the disease. You still want to get cured from your cancer. So come buy my 150 supplements a day, which have no side effects, because they have no effects, period. That's how they do it, and that's what they're doing. So now we're going to jump over to Mr. Riza Islam. This is from the ADL, Anti-Defamation League. We're just going to establish off the bat that he's pretty deep into conspiracy theory land. Jewish people today are not true Jews. Jewish people control the media in Hollywood and use that control to censor black people. Jewish people disproportionately own slaves or controlled the slave trade. Jewish people and members of the LGBTQ plus community are pedophiles or promote pedophilia. LGBTQ agenda is part of a calculated effort to feminize black men and bring on the extinction of black people. He's part of the Nation of Islam. But you notice all of this is, let me scare you because you're black, And because I'm black, you can believe me. No one is born gay. It is forced upon them through chemical manipulation by the government and, quote, international bankers, close quote. I don't know why international bankers would want to make anyone gay, but apparently, according to Riza Islam, they do. Vaccines cause autism, illness, or death, particularly in black children. That all goes back to the study that we just showed was paid for, that's been debunked, on the 12 children by Dr. Andrew Wakefield. All of them run back to him. Every single one of them. So I think I'm in safe territory, considering I don't see any evidence that international bankers are putting chemicals, I don't know, into the water or the air or whatever, trying to turn men gay, and that vaccines cause autism has been thoroughly debunked, and saying that Mr. Riza Islam, who does not even have a college degree, much less an MD, is a conspiracy theorist. When he produces evidence of something, I will be happy to address it. Dash Mickey, so all those people who were most like vaccinated as a kid, they still have these doubts even though nothing has happened to them all of these years. Some of them claim that things have happened to them, like Dr. McCullough's girlfriend, who we're getting to in a second. But mostly, it is a way to grift the gullible. It is a way to find people who distrust big institutions and separate them from their money. I'm not saying anybody out there should trust a big institution implicitly just because it's big. Don't misunderstand me. But when all these people are selling you is be scared of the big institution, buy my product instead, you need to go a little bit deeper than just stopping there and handing over your wallet. And you need to go deeper into looking at the actual science, not in their conspiracy theory lands. If you want to find the one study that says that vaccines caused autism, that's fine. Go look at all the meta studies on the 1.2 million children showing that it doesn't, and then go find out that Dr. Wakefield was paid to produce that study, $1 million, and that he had to specifically find the children as provided by the attorney paying him the $1 million to create it. Don't just look for stuff that supports your current position. You need to look at both sides to find the truth of the matter. Rashid Buttar. Oh, look, another DO. I'm really starting to wonder about this degree. That's the third or fourth one so far in this list. Why is it producing so many quacks? Or rather, why are so many of these quacks DOs? Twice reprimanded by the North Carolina Board of Medical Examiners, cited by the U.S. FDA for illegal marketing of unapproved and adulterated drugs. So he's got one of those awesome little, basically cease and desist letters as well. Accused of providing unprofessional conduct, providing ineffectual therapies to 4 cancer patients. 3 of those patients later died. I bet he leaves them out of his memo. Let's look at one of his videos. What's he
selling?
selling?
A bomb on you, something that I just found this out myself, and I don't think they said we can't say this, but anyway, I'm going to say it anyway. And if I get in trouble for it, I'm going to get in trouble for it. Take a wild guess how many attempted assassination attempts on the president occurred from the time that he got elected, I think it was November 17th, to the time he took office. You want to take a wild guess? 25. From November 2015 till January 2016 when he took office. He had his own private security force, and if that private security force hadn't been there, they could have gotten him.
What's that tell us?
Exactly. And look how many times they've tried. He was not supposed to get elected. He was not supposed to be the person who got in charge of the country. And because he can't be controlled, they have been coming after him since the first day on the planet. And thank God the American people see the truth. Whether you agree with him or disagree with him, he has done everything that he said he was going to do. Go back and look at his platform when he was running for office. He clearly said vaccines are directly related to autism, which is the truth. By December, we would have 100 million vaccines, and by January of 2021, we'd have 200 million vaccines. And we were going to have the military roll this out to spread it. I talked to the president's advisor, and he says, well, did anything sound strange to you in that comment? And I said, well, yeah, the military part, because you use the National Guard or the reserves, but you couldn't use the active duty military. You can only activate the National Guard, and you can maybe activate the reserves, but you can't use active military. He's prior military himself, and he said, yeah, anything else? I said, no, I didn't notice anything else. He said, what were the dates when he's going to roll out these vaccines? I said, December and January. And he goes, and when are the elections? I said, November. And he started chuckling. Now, there's a lot of information like this. The president is in the middle of a cesspool. This was a classified information by the Russian government that was actually initially published in 1977. It was only for governmental use, and it was marked that way. And the CIA declassified it in 2012. So it's actually been public information since 2012. But this is, we're looking at 43-year-old literature talking about the 5 millimeter 60 hertz frequency and the detrimental effects it has on the human system, actually not just the human system, on any living system, and it's been completely ignored. So looking at just some of the fundamental aspects of what this energetic system does, what this radio frequency electromagnetic fields do, and they have an impact on...
Are we going into 5G territory? I think we're going into 5G territory, folks.
On all living things, no matter whether it's 1G, 2G, 3G, I won't say...
He stopped.
Regardless of what level it is, it's always had some type of an impact on physiology. But the most recent version of it creates some very noticeable
1G, 2G, 3G. I won't go any further. It's always had some kind of quote unquote effect on the body. And the most recent version of it, what would the most recent version be? I think we're up to number 5.
Metabolic changes, and these changes have an impact not only on the immune system but also on the cell membrane integrity. So for example, one of the things that we see is that the voltage gated...
Okay, so the awesome thing, the absolutely awesome thing about the whole 5G conspiracy thing is he's not the only one. But just remember this. China is about to switch to 5G. It's behind the US, but not for long. From October 30th of 2019. So for anybody who wants to point out that Wuhan, China had 5G towers, please explain to me why the first versions of coronavirus, of COVID-19, were not in the United States since we had 5G towers first. Because I think you're full of shit. That's all you need to know about Dr. and I use that term loosely, Rashid Buttar. Okay, so this one is Erin Elizabeth. And you might remember the guy on her left is Dr. Mercala. Again, not an MD. It's his girlfriend. Wonder why she got into this movement in the first place. What did I say the timestamp on this one was? 8:15.
Experiences for unknowledgeable parents today. I mean, that's what they do, because, you know, they have so effectively manipulated the game. You know, Monsanto's in bed with the government. It's really a fascist system where the corporations are connected with the governments. They control the federal regulatory agencies. They actually cause us to pay taxes to educate them, to tell them the lies. It's crazy. So there's no protection from the government on this issue. In fact, they use the government as a tool and to get away with this thing. And now it's going to be probably even worse with Bayer, which is formerly known as IG Farben, which is, you know, basically killed millions of people in World War II with making the gases that killed them in Germany in the Holocaust. This is the same company. IG Farben is Bayer. Yeah. Bayer just bought Monsanto for $66 billion.
Yes,
so I mean, they're perniciously evil companies in this world, and that's just one good example. But there's others, and you know, when you have that much wealth and power, you can control the government essentially. Especially, they've been around for over a century. Monsanto has been around for over 100 years. They were responsible for actually, and that was a tangent, but it's an important tangent because
Let me sum that up for you. Be scared. The government's out to get you. Don't trust them. Big Pharma's in bed with the government. Can't trust them. Buy my shit. Again, we're selling fear. We're going to make you scared, and I'm going to offer you the solution. His estimated net worth by him is about $100 million. If you want to know why he's doing this, why any of them are doing this, this is why. It started with Dr. Wakefield getting $1 million over 2 years. Ultimately ended up costing him his medical license. And now he's full blown on the anti-vax routine to make his money. Apparently, there's a lot of money in separating gullible people or people who do not have the time to do the research into this stuff from their money, from their wallets. But if you want to know about Erin Elizabeth Finn, all you have to do is look at the fact that she's dating Dr. Mercala, and she's sitting right next to him, agreeing with, sharing, publicizing everything he says. They're not only partners together in life, they are partners together in business. Christine Northrup. Our first MD. We're what, 9, 10 down the list? We finally got an actual medical doctor. Finally. Doctorate of Medicine from Dartmouth University, obstetrics and gynecology. Started her practice in '96, incorporated holistic and Western medicine. She was a regular guest on Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Oz, appearing as a women's health expert. She has appeared on as a guest on Today, Rachel Ray, The View, and 2020. In 2016, when asked about her age, my biological age is 33, my wisdom age is 300. Very humble individual here. She believes in astrology, tarot cards, chakras, and regression therapy, all of which have no scientific credibility. The term anti-vaxxer was created by Big Pharma. She believes that in a previous incarnation, she lived in Atlantis. She does not believe in the germ theory of disease. The reason college students get sick with illnesses such as meningitis is that they are run down and have a shaky first chakra. To diagnose her own illnesses, Northrup has admitted to using tarot cards. She wrote in one of her books and reiterated on the Oprah Winfrey Show that thyroid problems in women develop because of an energy blockage in the throat region, that the result of a lifetime of, quote, swallowing words one is aching to say. I think we have left behind the scientific realm of medicine somewhere around using tarot cards to diagnose your illness, not believing germs are real, and instead thinking it's all chakras and energy. That's not science. That's not medicine. I'm glad you got an MD at one point in time, but I'm pretty sure that's not what they went over. Next, we're going to jump to number 11, Dr. Ben Tapper. Dr. Ben Tapper is not a doctor. Dr. Ben Tapper is a chiropractor. First thing you need to know.
My name is Dr. Tapper. I'm in private practice in Omaha, Nebraska. I don't wear a mask. I see over 200 patients a week. I come in close proximity with every patient that I come across. Why haven't I contracted this so-called disease? Americans make up 5% of the world population, but yet we take in 65 to 70% of the world's pharmaceutical drugs. We are one of 2 countries that allows pharmaceutical advertisements on the television. But yet 80% of Americans are suffering with a chronic disease associated with poor lifestyle Choices. 700,000 people will die of heart disease this year alone.
Doctor, please bring yourself in order.
600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?
I don't wear a mask because we haven't cured heart disease. I don't wear a mask because we haven't cured cancer. Is not a reason to not wear a fucking mask. That'd be like saying, I'm not going to wear a seatbelt because some people ride on a bicycle. What do you mean I should eat a salad? Somebody else is eating a hamburger. We know we haven't cured cancer. We know people are going to die from heart disease. We haven't cured that either. We haven't cured people dying. People are still going to die. But if the mask can help people not die, you know, like chemotherapy can help people not die from cancer, we're going to use it.
That's come across.
Last but not least, we've got Kevin Jenkins. He is similar to Riza Islam, a black gentleman who is mostly responsible for trying to spread vaccine hesitancy in the African American population in the United States. If you're not aware, there has been a history in the United States of racism, and that includes even medical science. There's been cases in the past where we told people we were treating them for diseases and we weren't, to see the effects. Google up the Tuskegee medical experiments. Ooh, we're getting a bad storm here. I apologize if that's coming through. Based on that history, Riza Islam and Kevin Jenkins here both are trying to use that to benefit and profit themselves. Again, let me make you scared, and then I'm going to offer you the solution to your fear. Not providing evidence that it's still ongoing.
That passed the.
Well, yes, it passed yesterday. It's on the floor now. They're debating it as we speak. And I think a lot of people from Colorado, families live in Colorado, should be concerned about it. You know, the whole focus of SB 163 is real simple. It's starting to track our kids, which we ought to be concerned about. That means sharing our information, you know, not protecting, you know, the doctor-patient client relationship. It allows for the Colorado Department of Health to add any vaccine to its schedule. So you have a schedule now, so that's going to be expanded. And that's a serious issue based on the fact what we know about vaccines. You know, we're not anti-vaccine, we're actually pro-life. You know, we're actually pro-family, pro our children, and we have issues with those vaccines. It forces parents, you know, really, it's really interesting. So if you want to opt out in some way, you have to, you know, take you have to do a reorientation. You have to do a modular, you know, you have to, what is it called, an online re-education. And think about that. You know, we're China now, you know. You know, we're the other countries that we've been fighting, you know, the talk about democracy. We're losing ours every day, right? So it's important.
Yeah, so I want to bring this up. So the reason why we're doing this segment is that we've had a number of calls, a number of emails. We had the protest that happened on Sunday.
Yes.
So there was a first reading of this bill, SB 163, on Sunday.
On Sunday.
At 10 o'clock. So
Interesting.
Is that kind of a rare occasion for it to happen on
with
Sunday?
a bill like this, it should have never happened on Sunday. Or a bill like this, we should have had stakeholder meetings in the community, because everybody's now asking questions like, why are you doing this? Why are you now talking about medical exemptions? Why are you attempting to take away our religious exemptions under the cloak of, well, you know, it's not going to happen. Well, no, don't worry about it. You won't be impacted. But state after state after state after state, where you have Democratic legislators, Virginia, Chicago, Illinois, Connecticut, New Jersey. They're now, Big Pharma is in those legislative offices negotiating with those legislators to take our medical freedoms away from us, take our right to our body autonomy. They're doing all of that as we speak, and no one understands the damage that's going to be done. So we're right now fighting for our constitutional rights. We're not right fighting for our medical rights. Right now we're fighting for our medical exemptions. Right now we're fighting for our life. And that's serious.
So
if this bill passes, our democracy has ended. Your life is over because you're fighting for your life and you're fighting for your democracy. A bill allowing Colorado to add vaccines to their already existing vaccination schedule. Big Pharma is coming for your life and your democracy. And we're going to be China soon. Again, we're selling fear. But if you go to my website, for just a small monthly fee, I can make you safe or feel safe again. Maybe Big Pharma, and by Big Pharma, I mean these multiple competing pharmaceutical companies. Maybe all these states, you know, Colorado and Virginia and North Carolina, ones he mentioned, are just following the evidence. Big cartography, big map makers aren't in on a conspiracy to have you think that the earth is round. They're seeing the same evidence and they're telling you the same thing. Big pharma, big pharmaceutical companies, all the universities, all the health organizations around the world aren't in on some conspiracy to take away democracy around the world, or give all the kids autism in the world, or for Riza Islam to turn people gay. They're following the same damn evidence. The same evidence that let us eradicate smallpox, that let us eradicate polio. And you guys out here, and gals, that are citing debunked studies that were paid for, bought and paid for, by an attorney seeking to create a class action lawsuit from a disgraced, disbarred doctor, former doctor in England. I'm in favor of free speech, but you should get to bear the consequences of these actions as well. You want to go shout fire in a crowded theater with zero evidence of fire? You don't get to, because you cause harm to other people. You want to go shout this kind of bullshit on social media? Zero evidence? You don't get to, would be my answer. For the same reason. I'm happy you're making your hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, depending on which one of these 12 you are. But it's blood money. Literal blood money. About 9 minutes early, but on account of the storm and that I've said all I have to say about this, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. Later this afternoon, power willing, I'll have all the links in the description if you want to investigate these nut jobs any further. But again, I cannot stress enough, these 12 are responsible for 65% of the content on Facebook related to anti-vax information. I believe it's 73% online overall, social media. But the majority of people who are buying into this aren't batshit crazy like these people are. They just have doubts. Maybe not even specific doubts. But just like the person who hears somebody yell fire in a crowded theater, they might not see fire or smell smoke. They might think it's bullshit. There's a certain percentage of them that are going to be concerned enough to act based on that lie. In this case, there's a certain percentage of people that are confused and concerned enough to not act based on these lies. So if you know somebody who's in this position, you need to take the time with them and try and walk them through whatever concerns it is that they're specifically having. The estimate to reach herd immunity in this country is 70 to 90% of a vaccinated population for COVID-19. The longer we do not have herd immunity in this country and the vaccine keeps cycling, the more chances there are for it to mutate into something more deadly or more contagious, which we're already seeing with the Delta variant. We need to get a grip on this sooner rather than later. And holding people like this accountable. Financially, if necessarily, if financially at a minimum. And I would argue there's got to be some kind of criminal culpability or liability here, I would hope. Similar to yelling fire in a crowded theater. But I am fine with these people being deplatformed. That's all I've got to say on the matter. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and everybody who stuck all the way through if you're watching it later. Again, sources will be on the YouTube link down below later this evening. I have to wait on YouTube to finish processing. As always, this has been Chris. Thank you for watching The Left Speaks, and hopefully I'll see you next Sunday afternoon. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. The time for silence is over. There was once an unprecedented time in American history when common citizens of their day began to define the rights of man and documented how those rights were being violated by their current government. They wrote to each other. They debated with each other. Ultimately, it was these common citizens who recorded these rights for all eternity, and furthermore created a new and free nation founded on these rights with liberty and justice for all of its citizens. Times have changed, but these rights remain.
I don't take responsibility.
That all citizens have the right to life. That all citizens have the right to pursue happiness. That all citizens are created equal. That all citizens have the right to a public trial. That all citizens have the right to peacefully assemble. That all citizens have the right to petition their government. What happens when you try to exercise these rights today? Is this government honoring your rights? Or are they violating them? Is this the government that those citizens aspired to? There is a solution.
I don't take responsibility. I don't take responsibility. I don't take responsibility.
Join me every Sunday afternoon for a new show where common citizens, you and I together, discuss with each other issues of today, where we demand proof and evidence is required, where we seek the truth and will not be silent. Join me this coming Sunday afternoon and take part in America's oldest and most honored tradition.